And obviously in the chart of accounts, you can bung on multiple filters. And so why would you use account schedules when you can do that in the chart of accounts? You can produce some really nice looking stuff just by horsing a filter in there and filtering by date or dimension or account code or whatever you want. But what if you want to compare that filtered view to last year or to budget or the prior 3 months? Or what if your boss wants a set of management accounts? Or if you need to see all of your sales by dimension on one page? What do you do then? Well, account schedules are there to help you do that. So who am I? I've been a NAV user since 2011. I started on NAV 2009 R2, which was the role-tailored client, and we had to do all of our reports out of the classic clients who were hopping backwards and forwards between different versions. And that was as a user. And I went through a variety of upgrades as a user and put warehouse management system in with Tasklet Factory handheld. I ran a book wholesale company at the time. And steadily and slowly but surely, I fell more and more in love with NAV and Business Central, and found that I was getting more and more bored with running a company and more excited about messing around with NAV. And so in about 3 years ago, I jumped ship and became a freelance consultant, working with a company that was on a 2017 on-prem Business Central with a NAV desktop client. Did an upgrade with them, put 11 companies live for them, doing all kinds of weird things like running pubs to breeding horses to renting out car park spaces, all sorts of interesting and exciting things with them. And then earlier this year, I joined Microsoft Gold Partner, who are Kick ICT, who are based in Glasgow. And that's been kind of terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Because as a user, when you're working for one company, you learn the stuff you need to know. And as a consultant, of course, you learn the stuff that your customer needs you to know. And that's been quite an eye-opening experience. So that's quite exciting. And I'm having a tremendous amount of fun doing that. Stuff I do in my spare time. I am a Power Platform hobbyist, so I muck around building apps and writing flows, and my intention is to bring that into my day job pretty soon, and I'm looking forward to doing that. You can find me on Twitter, as I've shown there, and I have a blog also with a terrible play on words, MatNav, where I try and write about how to do things in Business Central from the point of view of an absolute beginner. Because I find that whilst the Microsoft documentation is great, it often assumes a certain amount of knowledge that people don't necessarily have. If I've got any speciality, it is in reporting. I'm the Jet Report specialist at the partner I work for. And probably in a session about account schedules, the less we say about Jet Reports, the better, because that is for another time. So I'm going to give you a guided tour of account schedules, how they work, how they're structured, and then I'll do a demo at the end. And so it's all going to be pretty basic, straightforward, out of the box stuff, hopefully. So bear with me and let's jump straight in. So as we've discussed already, one of the nice things about NAV is that you can filter the chart of accounts, which is great, but you can also use account schedules to build financial reports right in the program. And you can use all kinds of different formats to do that. And account schedules are terribly flexible for doing that. So you can do stuff in the format that your customer wants or that your board of directors wants. I've got fairly limited experience with other ERP systems, but I used to use Sage Line 50 before we upgraded to NAV back in 2011. And I've seen other people using Dynamics GP. And account schedules has, I think, considerably more to offer than both of those systems, particularly Sage. Sage is awful, and allows you to do an awful lot more stuff. Typically, you would use them for your management accounts, for your P&L or income statement, and your balance sheet. But they can be pressed into action for all kinds of other things. And Business Central obviously uses them for cash flow functionality, and that's the other option you can use them for. But you can do an awful lot more stuff with them, and they're really useful just for some quick and dirty analysis sometimes. There are two main elements to account schedules. you have basically you're building a table and you're using both rows and columns to build that table. And in the setup for account schedules, you have a setup table for rows and a setup table for columns, and I'll go into those in a bit. And then there's also an overview header, which allows you to put filters on and decide which date you're going to use and which combination of rows and columns you're going to use, and I'll show you that later on. There's also another feature, which is analysis views. That is rather more complex than I think I'm prepared to go into at this time or have time to go into at this time. So that's another talk in its own right. And perhaps if they invite me back, I'll talk about that at another BC Bootcamp. But let's see how we go today, eh? So account schedules rows. So as you can see, there's a table here. What I've done is I've opened up the personalization pane just on this snapshot, just to show you that there are all kinds of fields that you can add in as well. So this is what the rows screen looks like. Now, ironically, when we talk about rows, we're mostly going to be discussing the columns on this table. And when we come to talk about columns in a minute, we're going to talk about the rows in that table. So try not to get too thrown by that. It confuses quite a lot of people. So just going through left to right, row number. This is where you define the identifying number for the row that you're using. And my advice to you would be to use a sort of schema as they've got here, which is alphanumeric, and enables you to throw in interim rows should you need to add rows in. It's always a good idea to make sure that you've got differently numbered rows, because you may need to use those numbers in formulas later on. Description is self-explanatory. That's what's going to go on your report. So you're going to see these words appear on the left-hand side of your report as the rows on your report. Totaling type is where we start getting interesting. There are lots of choices in this field here. And what you choose here will relate to what you then populate this field with, this totaling field next to it. The main two for our purposes today are posting account, and that brings back the posting accounts that are listed in the totaling column. So as you can see here, I've got the posting account of 10100 from the chart of accounts. That's the GL number. And in the one above, there's a slightly longer set of two strings there separated by a pipe, and it's going to bring back the total of all of those GL codes that are within those two ranges that are separated by the pipe there. The other option you have in totaling type is formula, and a formula brings back the results of the formula in the totaling column. So very simply put down here, there's formula in there, and that's going to bring back the total of these rows. So I've got P002.01 to P002.04, which are these rows here. So it's going to bring back the total of those rows. And then there are other ones which are used for cash flow and other functions, but I'm gonna move on from those for a bit. There is one final one which I will mention because I'm going to demo it later on, which is set base for percent, and that is for, if you can imagine a scenario where you want to produce a profit and loss account with key ratios based upon the total sales. The set base for percent would be used as the first line in the report, and then would act as a reference point for the remainder of the report. And again, I'll show you that in a bit. Row type here, this lets you choose between net change and balance at date, which are two functions of the chart of accounts. So net change is obviously the total of a date range, and balance at date is the total since the beginning of time and the end date you put in the date range. Amount type here, you can choose from a net amount or debit or credit. So you can decide that you want to show, for example, this nominal code here as credit on this line and debit on this line, so you can show the two separately, should that be a requirement in your company. Show opposite sign, this is a nice one for not frightening your board of directors. So in Business Central, sales are obviously credits, and that is shown as a negative number. I have a theatre studies degree and not an accountant, but everything I've learned about accountancy I've learned through using NAV and Business Central. So sales are credits, they show as negative numbers. Expenses are debits, they show as positive numbers. Lots of people on boards of directors don't like seeing sales as negatives for reasons that I think it's not too hard to understand. So if you tick that checkbox there, it's going to bring your sales through as a positive number, so it doesn't scare everybody around the boardroom table. This show column is quite a nice little feature. What this does is it allows for rows to be hidden or to show either all the time or only when there's a figure to report, or on occasions when it's only positive or negative. So you can have this set so that it shows only if that row is reporting back an amount. And if there's not reporting back an amount, it'll leave it out of the report, so you don't end up with a report clogged with lots of rows that have zero value. And then finally, we have some self-explanatory formatting choices where you can bring bold, italic, underline back from the report. And then you can also drag in like the double underline field from here, which you would just select that and drag it back in here. Oh, I've hopped on too far. Yeah, and then yes, the other thing I want to just mention is that there's some some dimension code total fields here, which we'll see on the demo. They're quite useful things to have in. So I'm going to drag in the customer code group total for the demo later on. The columns sheet looks very much the same as the rows sheet. It works in much the same way. Obviously, what we're going to talk about here are the rows that you've got. So each row in the column layout screen represents a column. So you need to number them separately, obviously, and you need to name them separately because these are going to appear here. They're going to appear along the top of your report. You need to make your column numbers distinct as with your row numbers, because you may need to add things in between columns 1 and 2. You might need to add an extra column in there should you want to for design purposes. So it's useful to have a schema there where you can actually put sub numbers in if you need to. Column type, so we've gone column number, column header. Column type, there's a whole bunch of different choices in here. Most of them pretty self-explanatory. We've used net change and formula here, but you can have balance at date. You can have the beginning balance, the year to date, or the rest of the financial year, or the total financial year. And my advice would be to play around with those and see what they bring back for you. But they're pretty much self-explanatory. The ledger entry type here. So this enables you to bring back either the entries from your chart of accounts, from your general ledger, or the budget entries. So if you've set up general ledger budgets, you can ask account schedules to bring back the budget entry for the nominal code that you're reporting against. So that's really handy if you want to do an actual versus budget report using account schedules. And again, I will show you that in the demo. Amount type is, as in with rows, that's either net amount or it's a debit or credit if you want to show debits and credits on separate columns, which again might be a requirement in your company. Formula is self-explanatory. It works the same way as formula on rows. So you can see this row here. What I've got is I've got the current period, I've got the current period budget, and then I've got a variance between the two, and I'm showing that as a formula under column type, and the formula is there, which is, oh, done it again, keep clicking on it like it's an actual screen instead of presenting. So it's bringing back a column 1 divided by column 2 formula there. And these are quite elaborate, and you can do some really quite elaborate formulas in here should you need to. Show opposite sign again, that works in the same way as it does on rows, and again is quite handy. It's quite useful for formulas, to switch formulas on and off from showing negative, and I've done that elsewhere. Comparison period formulas and comparison date formulas is worth a brief instant just to stop and discuss. So most companies that I've encountered use accounting periods that are tied to the calendar month, and that's pretty straightforward. So the company I ran did that. The last client I worked for when I was freelance had a variety of different ways of doing it. And because they worked doing retail sales, they had quarters that were comprised of one period of 5 weeks and 2 periods of 4 weeks. So they worked on a 5-4-4, 5-4-4, 5-4-4 pattern. And that circulated out throughout the 12 periods of the year, which meant that every period that you were comparing against the same period last year had the same number of weekends in it, which for a retailer is really key. They also had another company that they were running as a management service for a different organization, and that company had a 13 period financial year, 13 periods of 4 weeks. So obviously we used the accounting periods feature in Business Central to record those accounting periods, and we used the comparison period formulas to bring those results back. If you're using calendar months, then the difference between the two columns is negligible because the dates are the same for both of them. I tend to stick with comparison periods because it's just easier to think in terms of one thing rather than both. And so I would always use the accounting periods as being the calendar months, if that's the requirement, and then stick to putting my calculations in there. There are probably other ways of doing it, and you feel free to disagree with me to your heart's content at the end. Show is again always or never, or when either positive or negative. And then rounding allows you to round very, very big numbers down to much smaller numbers. So if you're an organization that is doing tens of millions of pounds worth of sales, for example, it'll allow you to round down by hundreds of thousands, so that you can put a column header on that says sales in hundreds of thousands of pounds and show a smaller number, so you don't have runaway massive numbers all over your charts of accounts. There's other stuff, obviously, that you need to take into account when you're setting up account schedules, right back at the early setup stages. Obviously, one of the great features about Business Central is the ability to break things down by dimensions. And that's one of the keys to the flexibility of account schedules. So obviously, you want to set your global dimensions when you're setting up your company, and you do that in the General Ledger setup here. But just below it in General Ledger setup, you'll notice a reporting tab, a reporting fast tab. And that's got the names of various account schedules in them against the type of account schedule they are. These are the account schedules that Business Central will create off its own bat, and it does that using account subcategories, which I'll go into briefly in a second. You can build your own account schedules and put the names of those in here should you want to. What Business Central will do, though, is when you make any changes to the account subcategories, it'll ask you if you want to update your account schedules. And if you say yes, these are the ones it's going to update. So choose those quite carefully. They'll be the main ones that you use. So if you're going to use an income statement or P&L or a balance sheet, then those are the names of the account schedules you should put in there for that purposes. Account subcategories they're a relatively new feature in Business Central. They've been around for a couple of years. What they do is they enable you to group blocks of general ledger codes together. As you can see here, you've got an income account category there and there and there and there. And what Business Central will do on the account schedule is it will group the nominal codes for those income account subcategories together and bring them back into the account schedule as a single row. So that's quite handy. And I'll talk again a little bit about that in a minute. The other thing about dimensions is you need to give some thought to how you set them up. So from a reporting point of view, it's worth adopting a stacked model using begin and end totals like I've shown here. So this allows you to report not just on individual dimensions like the large, medium and small dimensions I've got there, but also on the group total. So that 199 dimension code there. And what that enables you to do, if you use that group total, is should you, during the course of your operations, need to add in, say, a fourth dimension for micro business, say, and you put the code of 140 in there, you don't then have to go back to your account schedule and change the formula on that line, because that 199 group total will bring together everything that sits between 100 and 199. So if you put in 140 in there and put micro business in there, it's going to grab all the transactions that are then tagged with that dimension code and bring them back into this end total. So it's a really neat way of enabling you to get some flexibility and then not have to rewrite your account schedules as a result. Have I gone the wrong way? No, I haven't. Hang on, I've got myself a bit lost. So I talked a little bit about account subcategories a moment ago. The one thing I didn't say is one of the reasons why you might use these so this is what it looks like when you set up the account schedule. So the account subcategories sit under GL account categories in Business Central. And you can see here, there's your GL account category there, current assets. And then you've got the account subcategories here, cash, accounts receivable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that is bringing together, you can see the way it's bunching together the GL accounts in that category in this column here. And that's doing as I described earlier on when I was showing you the income account subcategory. What you'll see is on this page here, on the right here, you've got a list of all the accounts in that category and their names. So you've got the range of them running there, and then you've got what they are here. Here at the bottom here on the right hand side, you've got GL accounts without a category, and you would really want that to be empty all the time, because if you've got anything in there, it means that when you run your account schedule, you're going to be missing stuff. So what I would normally do when I go to a new client as a consultant is I'd take a look at the MAs they produce, and I would try and encourage them to structure their chart of accounts together so that it mirrors their MAs, and that's great. That's quite a nice thing to do, but things change over time, and so what can happen is that an emphasis can change because the personnel have changed or the emphasis of the business changes, and so they start structuring their MA in a different way. And in order to be able to accommodate that, you can then change which account subcategories you allocate against which GLs. And those account subcategories will then group your rows on account schedules and enable you to report your MAs in a slightly different format should you need to. And finally, on this page, on this button process here, there's a function called generate account schedules, which allows the user, having built or edited the account subcategories here, to either overwrite the existing account schedule or generate a new set based on the new subcategory setup. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick demo now. I'll probably stop sharing this screen and go and share another one. And I'm going to show you that particular feature, generating a new account schedule from the chart of accounts, how to set up dimensions on rows, how to do a column per month report, and a quick sales per budget if I've got time. I've run through this a couple of times in the past, and I either come in at like 40 minutes having talked really, really fast, or I come in at like an hour and 10 minutes having talked really slowly and faffed about. So I'll stop trying to faff about and just unshare and go and flip back into a different screen. All right, bear with me a second. Okay, here we are in Business Central. So account schedules. Quick sip of water. Where do you find them? So finance is where to go, and there they are there. Okay, account schedules there. I'm going to start, however, in the chart of accounts. And let's have a quick look. So here, as you can see, here are our account subcategories here, and you can see them all set up going down the way here. And that's, so for example, if we were to filter on that value, that would group all of those together. Income, they're all grouped together. As luck would have it, there's not much in there, but that's what it's going to bring back. It's going to bring back the total of these rows. Okay, if we take a look at the account subcategories again, let's have a quick look. GL account categories. Okay, so for the purposes of this exercise, I've set up an account. So accounts receivable is there. It included this previously. I've set up a new row. So basically, I took that GL code out of there, added it into there, created a new row. Okay. So what I would then do is go process and generate account schedules. And it's going to give me a warning saying, do you want to keep your existing account schedules or create new ones? Or do you want to overwrite the existing account schedules? So it'll overwrite the account schedules that you've got set in your general ledger setup that I showed you earlier on. So for the purpose of this, I'm gonna keep the existing ones and create new ones, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute. So that's pretty fast. So we then go to account schedules here. You can see that here we got our balance sheet. That's the thing that's set up in our general ledger setup, and here's the new balance sheet here. So let's just go and have a look at that, shall we? And if I go to process and overview, here you can see that I've got accounts receivable there, and accounts rec is the new row I've added in just there. Okay. Right, so
the Bluetooth device is ready to pair.
Oh, hello.
The Bluetooth device is connected successfully.
I think somebody needs to mute themselves. Right, right, dimensions on rows. Let's have a quick look at dimensions on rows. So let's have a look at income statement. Okay, what we've got here is a very straightforward income statement. This is the thing that the system has generated just now when I did the generate account schedules. And what I want to do is I want to have a look at the small, medium and large dimensions on income services. So I'm just going to chuck an extra row in here. And I'm going to renumber this. Okay. Make that the same as that. And then I'm going to go and look up my customer group total for small business. There you go, that's the one. And that's going to bring that back in. So it's as simple as that. So we'll just put a new line in. Tell I'm an old nav user because I keep pressing right click to bring drop down menus up, and of course I don't want to do that. Medium. That back, and that's 120. I happen to know. And then finally, let's put the large one in as well. Come on. Great. Large. Bring that back. This is 110. I obviously, when I set these up, I've numbered them the wrong way around, as you can clearly see. Let's make those opposite, because that's what we want to do. And just for the sake of fun, let's make them metallic. Not that one. That one and that one. And I'll underline that one. I'll show you this in Excel in a minute. And then I think what we'll do is we'll total that up as well. I'm trying to right click it again. What a clown. And what I'm going to do, instead of putting a formula in here, I'm going to total it using a slightly different method. And I'm going to say I want to show the range that runs from. So I could put 199 in there, and that would bring all of them back, as I showed you before. What I'm going to do is put that and that in, just as a different way of doing it. And then we'll go across here, show opposite. Yes, we wanted to show. We'll put that in bold. Okay, and let's have a look and see what that looks like. Oops, related, isn't it? Overview. Okay, and let's just put some slightly better figures in there. So let's make that P minus 2 rather than this period, make it last 2 periods ago. Okay, you can see here, so we've got no sales in for medium, but we've got 4,800 sales in for small, and we've got 3,054 in for large, and there it is totaling up there. Let's just have a look, another little look at one other thing we can do here. There's also, I happen to know because the data set in this trial company is absolute rubbish. There's also some stuff that's got no dimensions on at all. So let's go off and find those as well, just for the sake of showing you that, and just how you might do that. So let's say that's no dims. Okay, affect that. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to just use the symbol for blanks in Business Central, which is just 2 apostrophes. And I'll just go back again and take another look, and you'll be able to see it. And there you are. There's the missing number. Okay. Let's just do that period too, and I'll just show you what it looks like in Excel as well. P minus 2. And then we go, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do Actions Excel, send to export to Excel. There's 2 things you can do here. Okay, the first thing is you can create a new document. And the second thing you can do, which I'm afraid I can't demo because I've got a demo company here that doesn't want to play nicely with my my office environment at the moment, which is a shame. This is update copy of existing document. So you can download a document. Let's say you saved that to your company OneDrive or to a shared folder on your company server. And then you could continually update that document just by running the account schedule again and update the copy of existing document, which means that anyone in the company could access that. Let's say you have a time when you run that every Monday morning at 9 o'clock, and they know that from 9 o'clock onwards on Monday morning they're going to get up to date information for the previous week, for example. But let's just create a new document. Have a quick look at this. And let me know if you can see this, because I know that sharing screen on Teams sometimes doesn't show you what you want to see. Hang on a minute. Excel being very slow here. Sorry about this. Right, can everybody see that? Someone unmute and shout if you can't. I'm going to assume that that's a good thing. Okay, so there you can see we put those into italics. If you remember, we stuck an underline on this line here, and so there's an underline here appearing here, and there's our bold there. And you can also, the other thing you can do on the account schedule is you can pop blank rows in and bring back blanks, so you can dress it up quite nicely. And one of the things I've done as a very quick and dirty way of producing management accounts in the company style is to stick an extra tab in here and then map a cell to the equivalent cell on here, and bring that back, and you can bring that back in whatever font they want to have it in, and you can put the company badge in here, and you can make it look like their management accounts. And I've done that for clients in the past, and they've been relatively happy with that, and they've gone on using that for time. So that's one fairly quick, cheap and easy way of doing that for people if they need it. Let's not save that. Okay, let's have a look at several months at a time. That's quite a useful one. Let's just have a quick shifty here. I'm just going to go back away. Yeah, let's just stick with that one. Sorry, I've gone too far back. Right, I want to do my overview, and then let's have a look at some columns. So column layout name is currently this one here. We're just going to change the column layout. So I've prepared one of these earlier on because no one wants to see me put 12 months in at a go. And that is what it looks like. But let's have a look at how I set that up. That's what I should have done first. Okay, so first column is all important because that's what's going to relate to the period range that you put in your date filter on the header of your overview. And then it's going to refer to each of these things using the comparison period formula, and it's going to do it as per each formula in here. So here, the period before the period that I had specified is -1p, and obviously so on back the way in time, going down to -12p at the bottom. So that's the 12th period before the specified period. You'll notice that's slightly different from the period formula I was using in the header, which was p-2. And that's because this period formula is referring to, it's not referring to a specific, it's not referring to the current period, it's referring to the current period that you've specified in the report, if that makes sense. So if I put p-2 in the header of the report, that's going to appear in this column, and then that is going to be the period after that period. So I hope that makes sense. That's quite difficult to get your head around. I found my brain getting in a bit of a twist the first time I did that. So what it looks like, as I've just shown you, is this. So you can see we've got the current period here. So let's just prove that to you. That's just this period here. And if we drill into that, we can see, I've got information in all those. We can see that current period there. And we drill into that, and there it is. That's the date filter there. If we do the same on the next month, that's going to show us March. And there it is, and so on, back in time. Okay. So be careful with this. I designed one for the customer I was telling you earlier on about, who had 13 months in their financial year. And I set the thing up and it was fine. It all worked beautifully. And then she phoned me about 6 months in and said, it's stopped working. I don't understand why it's not working anymore. And of course, what she needed to do was set her current period here. And what she'd started to do was putting in the entire year. And what that did was throw everything out in terms of those comparison period formulas. And so she was coming back with absolute nonsense. She was getting a year's worth of sales there and then nonsense going back the way. So just be careful when you're doing that you stick with a single period. It's probably the best protocol to use. Particularly if you're comparing month to month. And then let's just do one final one. I've actually come in much more ahead of time, which means I've been talking too fast, I suspect. And let's look at sales versus budget. So I've set up a very little account schedule here. And that's sales versus budget. And let's just go and have a quick look at an overview of that. And let's look at the columns. Oh, come on, pull yourself together. period versus budget. So let's have a look at the column layout for that. Okay, so what's happening here is this is the current period, which is the same if you think about the column layout we've just looked at with the 12 months. That's the current period. Instead of bringing back the next month, we're bringing back the budget entries for the same period. So there's no comparison period formula in there because it's referring to the same period. And then we're doing a comparison formula. And you'll see this is different from the one on my slide because the one on my slide wasn't working terribly well. So it's a slightly more elaborate formula, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. And then obviously going back the way, we've got the same comparison period formulas for the same pairs of columns. So that's actuals, budget, actuals, budget, actuals, budget. This doesn't need a comparison period formula because it's using this formula here. Okay. So let's have a look at how that works. And I think the best example we've got is if I start with, let's start with November, and you can see what's going on here. So we've got actual sales of 40,922 against a budget of 40,000. So that's 2% over budget. And that's why the formula was the bracketed thing -1. And then this is 11% over budget. And this is 3% over budget, and so on. So that is requires a little bit of fiddling around with to get it to go right, and that's nearly always because you've got to muck around with those formulas to get them right. It's been my curse for the entirety of my career, most of which has been spent in retail or wholesale, comparing things to other things, that I can never quite remember exactly how to do percentage variance formulas, and so it takes me at least 3 shots to get it right. And I sit there with the calculator going, is that right? I'm not sure, but this is right. I have sat with the calculator and squinted at the screen, so you can trust me on that one. Okay, I think we're nearing the end now. Thank you for bearing with me. The final thing I was going to show you was the set percent as base, wasn't it? So let's have a quick look at that. And I think we went here. Oh no, maybe not. Oh, I know it was. It's here. So this is why I didn't want to overwrite the income statement on the general ledger setup, is because I'd actually prepared something sneakily earlier on. So if you recall, I was talking about the set base for percent totaling type here. And so what this is doing, we're going to show you, I'm going to show you how to set up a report with key ratios, with the key ratios based upon the total income on the P&L. So you bung in an additional row at the beginning and call it whatever you want to call it. You don't need a description for it because you're not going to show it, because all you're doing is you're producing a reference point for your key ratio column to generate its percentages against. So you'll see that the set base for percent is F009. So that's referring to this row here. And that row is obviously bringing back all of the total income on this report. So it's bringing back, it's got a formula bringing back rows P001 to P008, which are all of these here. Okay. So when we look at the overview, we're going to need to do some jiggery pokery on the column setup to make that work properly for us. So it's not showing us anything of interest just at the moment, but let's go into this and change the column. So it's a very simple column layout setup I've got there, because it's not showing me very much. So I'm going to chuck in another column, and I am going to call this one key ratio. And it's a formula type. Oh, wrong one. It's a formula type. And the formula is really simple. So I'm referring to column 1 because I want to see the key ratios of everything appearing in the first column. And because I'm doing it as a base for percent, the next part of it is just that. It's just a percent sign. And it's as simple as that. And it may be that we need to show the opposite sign. Yeah, we do. Well, let's go and have a look and see what that does then. Okay, and there we go. There's our base percent. So there's our total income coming at 100%. And then let's have a look at expenses. Let's have a look. Let's do P minus 5 because that's got some more information in it. P minus 5. So that's November, I think. There you go. And so you've got our rental expense coming in at £2,000, and that is 4.89% of our total sales. And our salaries expense is coincidentally exactly the same, sadly. But what that's doing is it's bringing back the ratios on your report so that you can see exactly what you spent as a percentage of your total sales. Okay, so that's me. Bear with me a second. I'm just going to go back into PowerPoint, if I may. And my final slide's got my contact information on, should anyone want to do that. And do we have any questions?
Hi, Matthew. Great to see your session.
Sorry, say again, I can't hear you there.
Hello there, Matthew. Great to see your session.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hi, Matthew. It's very great, Matthew.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very great, and it's a very useful session for the users to interfere into account schedules and how to use account schedules, how we can configure account schedules, where all we can utilize on the GL level.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, it's a very great session, and it's very useful session relating to the account schedules and how to configure account schedule, how we can utilize account schedule, and how we can make account schedule to be configured in a specific way by utilizing analysis.